in whichever organization you are working, whether in whatever capacity, as a leader, as a coach, when you are having conversations, people speak about their feelings. I'm not feeling so happy with these timings at work. I'm not feeling happy about Zoom calls, back-to-back Zoom calls. I'm not feeling happy about going to work or going, to office again, and so on and so forth. As coaches, we can use these tools, what you see on the slide, to assess that whenever someone feels something, the root cause is some or the other need.
Good luck, everyone. Here we go. Participants are filing in. I think you should be able to see the number at the bottom. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Where are you? Let us know in the chat where you're connecting from. And I'm sure our panelists, amazing panelists today, would love to see where everyone's joining from. And today we have an amazing discussion and we have some lovely panelists joining us here. And we're going to be talking about developing systemic relationships in organizations. We're going to be focusing a little bit more on the relationship aspect of things. And as we can see here, hi, Katie from Houston, Kelly from New Jersey, Rashima.
Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, welcome.
Yeah.
Wow, we have Chennai, Rhode Island, Bordeaux, France, Berlin, Germany, Salt Lake City, Utah, Ghana, Italy. Amazing.
New Delhi.
Cindy, I know you're used to it, but I think Tanaya, Deepti, Venkatadri, I think it's maybe a little bit different for you. You may not be familiar with our audience, but as you can see, they're an active bunch from all over the world.
Yeah.
So,
and they love the master classes, the masters in coaching webinars. And I love them for loving it. Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm going to hand over to the very capable Cindy to run the rest of this webinar, to host the panel. And I will be here in the chat box. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, any comments, and we'll make sure that the host and panelists, everyone can see and address them. All right, everyone, enjoy. All the best to the panelists, and I'm off camera. See you soon.
Thank you, Neha. So, coaches, well, thank you for joining us today. And today is quite an interactive, thoughtful discussion on, COVID has changed the dynamics of workplace, how we engage in the workplace, and how we relate. And over time, over the past few years, over 2 years, dynamics have changed. Some have strengthened, some have grown apart, but dynamics with relationships in different layers of the organization has changed. We're going to keep our focus today on what are we preserving? What are we maintaining in relationships? How can we rebuild? What are we noticing on the different dynamics in relationships within the organizations? And how, as we as coaches, can coach to accommodate all the newness that's going on around us? I welcome my panel that will, offer support and contribute in very meaningful ways. And I'd like to introduce to you to Deepti, Tanaya, and to Venkat. Many of you already know Venkat. He has appeared in our webinars before. And to Tanaya and Dipti, they have not joined the Masters in Coaching webinar. They are on their route to PCC, will be PCC very soon. But I got to say this, I selected them to join our webinars, today's webinar, because of their vast experience in working with people within organizations. And the experience is not restricted just to coaching, it's much broader than that, putting in many other modalities like leadership, HR, many other roles. So welcome to you, Dipti and to Tanaya, and we are so pleased to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy.
The master coaches on this webinar is, of course, Venkat and I. And from time to time, as we're talking, we will link core competencies into the conversation to make it more a masterclass. I'd like you to, of course, engage with us as much as possible to our participants. And before we get going, I'd like to ask an open-ended question to everyone. And please type into the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. What are you noticing changing in the relationships amongst employees in the workplace? And you can speak from both sides, whether you are employed in a workplace or whether you are a coach doing executive, organizational, workplace coaching. But what are some of the things you are noticing changing? And I can re-ask that question. What are some of the challenges you are noticing? And of course, to our panelists, what are we noticing? Venkat, do you want to start? What are you noticing changing in the relationships in workplace dynamics?
Yeah, thanks, Cindy, and thanks to my co-panelists, Tanaya and Deepti. I think it's a pleasure to be here. Actually, what one has noticed a change in the last, say, 2 years, what COVID has brought about. There are organizational changes, and there are a lot of people impacting changes that have happened over the last 2 years. One has noticed, I have noticed, whether it's my company or other companies, and we do keep in touch with what is happening. And as coaching professionals, we also keep talking to other coaches on what do they see in their clients and other people. What has happened is that while, of course, from an organizational perspective, things have changed, the need to work, in a more, in a virtual manner instead of physical meetings, a lot of virtual meetings, etc. I'll not focus so much on what happened to the organization. I'll focus more on what happened to what does it mean for people. Now, obviously, there were a number of things that impacted. First, at the foremost, what I think one has noticed is there that the Maslow's hierarchy kind of got reversed. That earlier we all used to say, I need the security, the food and other things, and then you keep going up, and then you go to self-actualization. One thing that COVID made everybody realize is that it kind of inverted the whole thing, and it kind of shook people. Whether the person would be alive, whether the person would have his or her near and dear ones continuing. So a basic fundamental sustainability issue started getting raised. So it kind of, the Maslow's theory got, so everybody, I mean, whether it's earlier we all used to think that it's only the poor and the people who are downtrodden who get impacted. Here we found whether the richest person also was getting impacted. I mean, one didn't know what would happen. So one of the big changes that took place is the whole concept of whether one would be alive, not alive. I'm making a very strong statement, but it did do that. And it also created, because of which, uh, you know, the near and dear ones, the safety of them, how do you take care of them? All of that became a very important part. Second thing that also brought about is that when a lot of people, it's really sorry, and we need to feel bad for people who lost their near and dear ones. And the other problem was that in many other ailments, when somebody passes away, one is at least able to go and see them in the last few moments, talk to them, which COVID did not allow. So what actually happened because of this is people realized that a lot of relationships which people were taking granted was getting questioned. So clearly is there that the need to be alive, the need to focus on relationships. People thought that, oh, my brother, my sister, my children, I'll keep talking to them once in a month. Now suddenly people realize that, oh, I need to talk to them every day, because who knows what may happen. So the whole relationships got changed. That was the second thing. The third thing that also happened is that from a professional, lot of, unfortunately, people also lost their jobs. So that also created a lot of psychological stress and pressure on people. That's the third important problem that took place. And the fourth important part of it is that you still had to do a work. And what used to be a physical interaction suddenly became a virtual interaction. So we'll talk a little more about it in terms of what did it mean for the people working, in terms of how did it change the way they were working, as we go along in the session. But a lot of structural changes did take place during COVID, and it impacted human beings in a pretty profound manner.
Thank you, Bianca. There's some quite significant points you raised, and we'll bring the points up again as we're unpacking throughout this webinar. Yeah? Thanks, Venkat. And to participants that's contributing on the chat box, I love your insights that you're sharing. Venkat also raised the question with me in our preparation for this webinar on the Great Resignation, and we are going to pick that piece up too. Dipti, from your organizational point of view, what are you noticing?
I think I'll build up on what Venkat said, right? COVID really forced people to slow down. We are all so fast, running so fast to keep up with the demands of the world, the organization, our own demands to be at the top. And suddenly the lockdown, pandemic, everything brought people to a full stop. It forced people to really hit that speed break. And people have kind of shifting their perspective in terms of relooking at what's happening. What are my priorities? Where should I focus? And suddenly it's not just that they have to take care of your office stuff. It's also a lot of things that need to be done at a personal level. So I think COVID has really made people look at their perspectives and bring about that change. Another thing that we really noticed, even people perspective and organizational perspective, is that it's brought in a lot of bridges. We've realized the importance of relationships that we've taken for granted. And suddenly people are more willing to ask for help because they know that they can't do everything alone. If COVID strikes you, you may need help of your colleagues, of your loved ones. We've had many cases in my experience where we've seen people from one city in our organization reaching out to other employees in other cities just so that their family members who are located in some other city can get help. And we've seen a lot of these bridges getting built and relationships getting strengthened on this basis. So I think these are the two other main changes that I would have seen post-COVID. Asking for help, building bridges, and changing the perspective and looking at priorities in life.
Thanks, Dipti. Tanaya, from your side, what are you noticing?
To give you a little different perspective, which is just emerging for me listening to both my co-panelists. As a coach, it makes me happy to observe what's happening around. The reason being is, as coaches, we always want our clients to be more self-aware and feel empowered. And maybe the Great Resignation is a classic example of people becoming more aware of what their needs are and taking actions and feeling empowered about it. So metaphor comes to my mind. I've been staying in this house for maybe 30 odd years, and there is a mirror in my room. I ignored that mirror because that was covered with dust and all of that all these years. And that dust and color was social or peer pressure, too busy with my life, chasing power or success, or achieving what I thought I deserved to achieve or to get. And suddenly COVID came like a splash of alcohol or a cleaner that just cleansed the mirror. And now I see myself very clearly in that mirror. And now I know what's important for me. What do I need? What's most meaningful for me? And that's why suddenly employers are looking at me that, Tana, you've changed. Your needs and priorities have changed. Maybe I have not changed, but I'm able to see what I was not able to see a couple of months or years ago. And that's the new version of Tanaya thanks to COVID. So I think that's my observation, that things are always there, but they just came to surface because of various incidences that happened during COVID.
It's a beautiful analogy. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like I need a minute for that to settle in. Yeah. I missed the chat box while listening to Tanaya. So is there any questions that you have that we missed? Okay, now we'll keep an eye on that. So there seems to be, to my panelists, so in this changing dynamics of people, especially relationships, and of course, we heard you all talk about how systemic the flow of that is, meaning the person, the team around that they're meeting on Zoom. Venkat mentioned the organization the team is a part of, so all other stakeholders there. And of course, then moving into, as an individual, your family members, the extended family, the neighbors, and whoever else you're reaching out to. And Dipti talking about reaching out to other teams in different locations to locate people. So in all the space that we are engaging with different dynamics of people and meaningfulness to them, what skills are you noticing? I don't know if this skills is the right word. What are you noticing that people need most? It could be a skill, or it could be a way of engaging. What are you noticing that people need? Venkat, you want to go first? What are you noticing?
Yeah. I think I would put it at a very basic level is there that it kind of humanized the whole organization. I would put it that way, because earlier in organizations, people were resources, people were, had to do some activity. But I think one of the most important thing that COVID taught all of us and many organizations is there that is to humanize, look at people as humans. They also have their own personal problems, mental problems, all those things. So earlier one would, the dealings would be like, look at somebody and say, hey, you are a finance manager, make sure that you do the finance as well, or you're a factory manager, you do the factory well. But people went beyond it and said, oh, that's all fine. The first important thing is that all of us are humans. So let us understand that there is a humanness. I know it's not the right English, but let us actually look at it and start looking at each other as humans. And then we bring in things like empathy, compassion, care, concern, all those things are very critical. They all go together as one block. That's what I would say as a big change that I have noticed in many people and many organizations.
For you, Dipti, what's emerging?
It's kind of similar to what Venkat said, right? And what really came up was this need. When we used to have interactions with teams and people, your first question is, okay, what are we meeting up for? What do we need to do today? So the focus is only on the agenda and what needs to get done. It's only on the task. But somewhere down the line, the focus has changed to how are you? How's your family? Are all of you keeping fine? Do you need any help? So the focus has really shifted to looking at the other as an individual and not just as the source for your task, right? Just the source for getting your work done. So there's really a shift in that perspective. And somewhere down the line, what we're really seeing emerging through post-COVID and what people are really talking about is how do I look at my emotions? How do I manage things better? Things are so difficult for me as an individual. How do I also manage my team, which is also facing as much issue? You're also seeing this aspect of the role of a manager really changing, and the role of the manager boss becoming somebody like, okay, you guys are staying alone. Do you need food? How can I help you? Are you all safe? So there's really a shift in the way you deal with people, the kind of relationships that you hold with people. Gone is a transactional way of working. There is so much more of a need that people are looking at the relationship more. And if that relationship is not genuine, if what you're hearing from your manager or your colleague is not genuine, then there is a disconnect. So that's what I'm really noticing.
Again, the humanness of it. Shanaya, for you, what are you noticing?
I work for different organizations in different capacities. So my observations are really based on that. One of my assignments is working for a full virtual organization for the past 1.5 years. So we've really never met in person. And this is like long way before COVID that the organization just operated that way. The other thing that I do is I'm a career coach, and I have so many millennials and Gen Zs coming to me that, okay, they want to change their careers, from what they have studied and what they're doing. And the third is I interview, maybe until interviewed till date, more than 1,600 professionals, mid-career and senior professionals who want to take up an executive MBA program for a reputed B school. Now I'm categorizing what I see into different categories. One is set of millennials or the Gen Z who are pretty new to the workplace. So their demands from the workplace are pretty different as compared to an existing workforce who was working in the same organization or similar capacity before COVID, and their needs seem to have changed. They've moved back to their cities or countries, and now they're finding it difficult to get back to work because their children are in schools there. They want to rent an apartment, whether should they come back or no to attend the office for 2-3 days a week. So that's a struggle. The other is somebody who's already in a senior leadership position, and their needs out of their remaining careers are pretty different. So just because this mirror has come in front of all of us and we've become so aware of our own needs, there definitely lies a discord in what one employee demands than that of the other. And hence that's posing a challenge. I'm sure that most of us are on LinkedIn, and we have witnessed this poll a couple of times. Do you want to get back to office? Which would be the best model, hybrid or so? And you see a diversity of opinions coming in there because some have the facilities, some don't. Some are tired staying at home with 3 kids and then in-laws, and they just want a silent space to work. So there's so much of diversity, and that's causing an overwhelm. But I still want to draw a little more attention. Specific, I'm talking to in terms of India, Asia, we have a lot of young population, and retaining millennials or Gen Z particularly, making them comfortable at workspace is becoming a challenge because they come in with a sense of entitlement. They come in with an expectation that I want to do meaningful work. They come in with an expectation that I need to be heard. They come in with an expectation that I need to know the bigger picture of what I'm contributing to. And retention becomes a lot of challenge. So since I have studied HR and I've been into the L&D function as an external one for years together. I've studied the Factories Act, that's an Indian legislation, okay? And we've always studied about legislations for employees who worked in physical environments. I'm wondering, is there time for us to revisit policies or revisit legislations or make decisions when we consider different needs of different demographics that we have now, and maybe the hybrid workplace and things changing? And so that was the question that was popping in my mind as my co-panelists were speaking about what's changing in the workplace.
Cindy, can I add something which is coming into me from what Tanaya is saying? She talked about the Zen, the generation Z. One big change that we have seen, and it does impact quite a lot of the Asian part of it, is the whole the role or the focus on women employees. Actually, what ended up happening is that earlier women, obviously, the way the Indian and the South Asian culture is that women tend to take care of, even if they are working, they do take care of the house as well, for whatever traditional reasons. Now, when the COVID thing happened, the women actually were the people who got, I would say, pretty badly affected from a job perspective, because what happened is that earlier they would be able to go to the office, somebody would take care of the house, a maid would come, etc., etc. Now, there was no maid, nothing there. The lady has to, the kids used to go to school, you put them into a bus in the morning and they go and they come back in the evening. Now the kids are sitting at home, the husband is sitting at home, the in-laws are there. I mean, the actually one thing that has happened very dramatically is that along with the the younger crowd is the women. I think they got also badly shaken in this whole thing, and what actually needed to happen is that many organizations. I would now link to that. So what we also saw in many companies is that women were resigning because they were not able to handle so many things at that time. So while we call the Great Resignation, along with men quitting, and many of them probably quit for purpose and all those things, being close with family, a lot of women quit because they were not able to handle this sudden increased workload. So organizations are now, I can talk about a few things that we did at a point of time. How do you give comfort to women that you can still have your career and yet do the other things that you're used to in your household? So that's another big delta that took place. The women got shaken out because of all of this, and of course I'm the only man and you three are women, so obviously you would understand it much better, but I could see it all across.
Yeah. I see a smile on Dipti's face as you were talking, Venkat. So I'm going to check in with her. What's that about? Oh, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I was just, I'm totally resonate with what Venkat said, because I know there was a point when, you would go crazy and I have a support system at home. I have two kids who are quite small, 4 and 6, and I have a support system at home. But there were days when, since I work in a bank, we had to go most days. But there were days when I was stuck at home working. So we were working at home and we were working for home. And there were days when we would go just crazy thinking of, the things that you need to do. And we would literally pray for getting back to office because it was crazy. And I remember when people used to ask me, how do you manage? And I would be like, I don't manage, my in-laws manage it. I have somebody to support. And it's again the relationships that come through there, right? And I mean, to what Venkat said, we see so many resignations even in our organization because women can't figure out how to take care of their kids. Daycares are not open. You don't have play schools where you can put children. Online schools are sometimes during working hours. So not just women, I mean, how do parents manage? So that's a big question that was there in everybody's mind, because that is something that COVID has really impacted. And again, only relationships there play a role, because unless you have somebody who is a support system, unless you've had those good bridges where you take care of somebody else take care for you, and you step in for each other, it's not going to work.
Janaya, you were also smiling there. Anything you want to contribute to this piece?
No, a piece of humor was coming to me and not gender specific. It's just that where Dipti was speaking about the wows of working women, I would say that a significant amount of men also got domesticated in the process.
All of us know that.
Definitely Venkat, because I heard all his stories about what he does. Yeah, absolutely.
Cindy, I'll now something it's something which came into me, but then I thought I will talk about this. The question is there that what is it that has become important because of all of this? And I'm going to use what an organization or a human being can do, and I'm going to use link it up to coaching and say what actually happened is that earlier in many organizations work used to be more transactional. Now it became far more relational. Now in that, a few concepts that became very important is there the whole concept of being present in the moment. Don't rush, just don't come, fire an order, say do this, walk away. That now people said no, let's talk to a human being, talk, ask question, check what's happening. So being present. And the second important thing that kind of came in is there that in many of the interactions, because people were yearning for human interaction, what is actually I see when people are getting back to work is the whole concept of putting the other person. Of course, here there's no client and a coach, but your co-worker or your whoever it is, putting that person as the center and then focusing on that person during that interaction. I can see that a big change that has taken place. Being present, and second, focusing on the person in front of you.
Yeah. Janaya, you were talking. Did we cut you off?
Oh, no.
Okay. So there's, Janaya mentioned revisit. There's some things you have to revisit. So is that what the current workplace is calling for in terms of the relationship dynamics? Is that what it's calling for? Re-engaging, the rethinking, refocusing, rebooting some things, right? If you don't want to do it the way it was, then you're looking at new ways of doing it. And of course, some things require reflections too on what's working, what's not working. So it sounds like answers in the past were immediately known. Answers to how we do things were known. And it seems like 2 years has put us into the space of lots of things unknown and figuring out for most as they re-enter workplaces or decide whether, of course, they want to resign completely or work differently, work a combination of office and home. And all this, within all this space, of course, we're managing dynamics around the various different dynamics around relationships. What are your thoughts around where there needs to be this refocus? Where do you think we need to go around refocus? I'm sure in your clients or in the dynamics around you, you are noticing some things emerging as what needs refocusing. What do you think?
Yeah, just go with it. I'm going to send something in the chat. Sorry.
Yeah.
Venkat, go ahead.
Dipti, you want to go ahead, or Tanaya? Yeah.
So I'm just sending something in the chat. And that is, that's a food for thought for everybody to reflect post the session or bring in some points if you, tend to read to it. So this is a new model proposed by a futurist in San Francisco. For the past 2 years, situations have been changing, and It's we say that VUCA is being practiced for more than 25 years and may not be as relevant in the situation today. So this is a new model that he proposed on how things have, people are becoming more anxious and things are non-linear and incomprehensible and all of that. So there's a lot to discuss around, how things have become. But what comes to my mind with the advent of the field of data analytics, when everybody seems to be talking about data and data analytics, I thought I'll rope it into coaching as well. Cindy, can I share a slide with your permission here?
Yes, of course. Do you have permission to share? Can you share?
Yes, I'm able to share.
Okay.
So this is my favorite slide, and I've borrowed this from Marshall Rosenberg's book on nonviolent communication. And when whichever organization you are working, whether in whatever capacity, as a leader, as a coach, when you are having conversations, people speak about their feelings. I'm not feeling so happy with these timings at work. I'm not feeling happy about Zoom calls, back-to-back Zoom calls. I'm not feeling happy about going to work or going, to office again, and so on and so forth. As coaches, we can use these tools, what you see on the slide, to assess that whenever someone feels something, the root cause is some or the other need. I'm giving you a minute to think on this. Feelings or emotions manifest from needs, either being satisfied or not being satisfied. So whether it's women or millennials or anybody in the workplace speaking about anything, if we are able to look at the unsaid or unexpressed needs, or even better, strike a conversation to understand their needs, these conversations will act as data points for us. And we can create a repository of all the data points that we get in our respective organizations, because what we suggest today may not be the best for your organization or for your role in your organization. We can't generalize. So the best way is to strike a conversation and just ask a question. What do you need at this moment? What do you need to make you feel better? What do you need so that it makes you feel happier and wanting to come back to office? And these could be data points for us to think of what employees or leaders or managers would be wanting in your organizations. I'm doing these two different assignments parallelly as I talk to you today on one role, on one leadership program, solely on leader as a coach. We know that all these years we had to excel, show our capabilities to get promoted as a manager or a leader, but with the era of information overload, no more can we be experts always, but we want to harness the group and team wisdom. And what makes us better leaders is having a coaching mindset, creating that conducive environment for people to work together. So again, bringing that coaching approach of asking, partnering with the way we partner with our clients, partnering with your employees, pacing the way we coach, and we follow the pace of our client, pacing with your employees. And again, as I'll bring back to this, is needs at the root of feelings and emotions of your employees. When the data sets are so clear in front of you, all you would need is intention, action, to take action and figure out what would be the right path or right action for your employees at that point in time. So I think that was through this model that I wanted to communicate.
Thank you, Tanaya. That raises the very dynamics. I mean, many dynamics around what people go through on different levels of emotions, right? It's so much more deeper and layered. So thank you for sharing that. And even Venkat raised that right at the beginning. Our needs, spoke about our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I want to invite Neha. Neha, are you noticing anything that you want to contribute to, meaning around, this changing dynamics around relationships in organizations? And what do we need more of now? What do you think?
Thank you for asking, Cindy. I'm definitely deeply resonating with everything that I've heard so far. And everything I've read so far too. I don't know if you got all the comments in the beginning, everyone talking about empathy and trust and meaning and like a deeper connection to each other and this deeper sense of like, what are we doing together here? What is our mission and purpose? I think those are the things probably, if, a good leader can help the entire team kind of buy into or enroll into the vision, and kind of sustain that narrative or whatever we're doing within a company or an organization, like that every single thing is meaningful, whether you're a little intern somewhere doing admin work or you're, a manager at a higher level. Everything leads to something, to probably give that sense of purpose and meaning to work, and of course to, yes, go beyond and develop that sense of I can trust that if I tell someone that, hey, you know what, I have had a really rough day, and do not have to, basically be crying 1 minute and have to go into a board meeting the next, things like that, to be able to trust and to be able to say that, look, I need this right now. Is it okay if we reschedule or if I take this time? I think just that basic sense of safety that, yes, I'm okay here. I'm okay to be my whole self here. I don't have to show up in this completely compartmentalized way, which is so hard to do when you're working from home. Like, for instance, this is my bedroom. Every time there's a meeting, every time there's a webinar like this, all of you are essentially in my room right now to me. When I have a scary meeting with someone, they're in the room with me. So it's my entire space, my entire life is being conducted from this room right now. And so, some people don't have the luxury of demarcating. Okay, I'm going to go and that is my office. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to do this. There is a need now for me to feel safe, to feel good, and to feel like I'm doing something meaningful. All those things are kind of coming together. So I think to feel satisfied and happy in a workplace, that those things definitely need to be addressed. And it's not enough anymore to just be like, okay, I'm getting a paycheck, it's fine, it's enough. It's just not enough anymore.
It's such valid points around the needs, because it's kind of, exactly what we all have been talking about, and the messages on the chats. It's the humanness of it. Yeah. And that always showed up as first, or priority in the last 2 years. And everything else seems to have emerged from that, right? I recall a male colleague, a few mentoring him also for MCC, and he said to me, it's so difficult to give my attention to all the meetings in the mornings when my morning was reserved to making breakfast for the kids, taking care of them, settling them into their homeschooling systems. And then only my meeting started. So now it's very difficult to readjust to an early morning meeting, knowing that I'm neglecting something else that's really important for me. I thought, it's really wonderful to hear how people have changed and have made more meaning for themselves now and still want to do everything that's important. But there's an addition now that we can't ignore. There's another piece I want to talk about, and thank you all for your contributions. I'm also reading it. And so enjoying what you are saying about, trust and empathy and compassion and how we're moving forward. The piece I want to pick up on before talking about this great or people resigning in the greatness of it. Let's talk a bit about all these words seem to be very coaching related. They put into trust, presence, listens actively. So it seems like the qualities or the skills that we learn in coaching is only applicable now to relationship building. Yeah. Anything you want to say about that? You know, how much of coaching is or a coaching approach is showing up in the workplace? Panelists?
Cindy, I'd like to add something here. In fact, when we got this topic, and I was just thinking about, systemic relationships and how relationships typically show up. We have an open coaching program in our organization where coaching is open for any employee if they really wish to use that space. And we see so many people really coming up in a manner of just 2 weeks from when we started registrations for this process. We had around 100 people who signed up. So that is the need for people to really come and speak a space that they could really trust. And when I was looking at those conversations and when we look at relationships as a whole, and what you just said, right? It's not just some aspects of coaching that I'm seeing. What I'm really seeing is the organization itself as a whole needs to embody the coaching mindset. Things like the safe space, the non-judgmental kind of relationship, the trust that comes in, not just with the relationships that we have with individuals, but in every process and policy that we build in. Because the trust is not just how you and I interact. It's about how my policies are going to impact every employee. It's about how the processes of the way I work and the way you want things work. So there are so many interdependencies that come across that for me, it was not just that people have to embody that in their day-to-day relationship, but the entire organization needs to have that kind of a mindset. And that's really what came up for me when I was looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah. But it's lovely to hear that in your company, your organization, coaching is offered to anyone and everyone. Yeah, it is special to hear that. And of course, I think a big thank you goes to you too for that.
That was the way we could see that difference, basically. So that's how we really brought it in. And we kind of tried to tie it into what people were requiring. So post-COVID, I mean, we had an area where people could go for therapy, but post-COVID, nobody wanted as such therapy, right? They wanted a place they could come and speak. They wanted a place where they could just figure out with all the changes. Like Tanai was mentioning, when we see the reflection and we sense that discord within us, and we want to kind of figure it out. And a lot of people just came back saying, thank you so much for just listening to me. I'm able to come and talk, not thinking in mind that this is a boss or this is an HR I'm speaking to, but I'm just able to say it and make sense. And somewhere I think in organizations, those safe spaces, those, listening circles or whatever we call it, it's just a place for people to come up and figure out what they want to figure out. And as coaches with that mindset, I think that's a kind of place we need to give people.
Yeah. Tanya, for you?
Big fan of this acronym that I heard on a Clubhouse event, and it said ACE, awareness changes everything. And while I agree on we should be empathizing, we should be listening, we should be creating spaces of trust, have unconditional positive regard, not believe that the map is the territory and all of that. I think we can't embody this without being aware of ourselves. these can't be accessories that we carry with us when you step out of the house in the role of whoever we are. But we really got to embrace all of these by being more self-aware of us as individuals, whether I'm a coach, whether I'm an HR professional or a panelist or whoever. So I think before we deliberate on what can we do as coaches, what can the HR fraternity do, what can employees do, we need to get back to ourselves. And it may sound a little harsh, but I think that's my point. That get back to ourselves and be aware. I mean, take out all the masks and the accessories of designation, title, experience, power, success, everything, and figuring out who we really are. And when we drop our accessories, we can really connect with each other, even if we may not have learned coaching formally or not have been educated formally in human resources. So for me, I think that could be a good starting point.
Sounds like MCC coaching, where you drop everything else and be there fully for your client. Thank you, Tanaya. Venkat, I got to engage you in this topic before we run out of time. The Great Resignation.
Yeah, on this, I would put it in, the problem which all of us talked about is that a lot of people had quit or whatever, was not really for pay hike, or I think a lot of people, they were looking at whether that organization gave them empowerment, gave them flexibility to work, whether they were given a sense of purpose in what they are doing. So those things became very important. And if you look at it, there were companies where, I'm talking about as when we look at studies that have been done in many parts of the world, companies which have had not a very good culture or a toxic culture where, where these things were missing, there was a big problem. And in companies like us, and you guys know that, as I come from Tata's, and Tata's, one of the hallmark is trust and care and concern for people. We did not have that same level of issues that, where organization did not allow those things to happen. So very clearly is that reiterating the whole concept of trust, care, concern. Now, the other thing that we also did in our own organization is that I'm just, what Tanaya also mentioned, there were a lot of programs which were held for managers to become more self-aware. So there were a lot of training programs and YouTube programs that were done to make people aware of how do you get to know if a person is not well mentally, or having a problem. Because earlier, at least, one could meet physically and get to see, a person is down, not down. You're seeing a person for the whole day. Now, people are talking to each other in a 1 hour Zoom. You don't know whether that person is really in a good shape or a bad shape. So, some of those programs were also conducted to make people sensitive to it, which is like becoming a coach, I would say that. The second big block that was also done is there was a lot of focus on in terms of health and wellness training. Is that one is the physical health part of it. Obviously, COVID, that was very important. And the other important part of it is the wellness in terms of mental, because a lot of people went through a lot of stress during this time. So, en masse, everybody was given an opportunity to actually reach out, talk to people. So, we had a situation, we had created an environment whether you could go to an internal person or you could go to an external person. And, where people could go and talk about some of their problems that they're facing so that they can get their things out of their mind. So these are things which many years back, I don't think many organizations would have even thought about it. And I would say that, I'm being a little self-critical. In a country like India, people don't talk about, stress and also openly. Whereas in certain other mature countries, people are open to talk about. So so here that was a very important thing. The third important part of it is it also, which is again a coaching related thing, is for everybody to become far more vulnerable with each other and say that, don't think that you only have a problem. I also have a problem. it's not that COVID is not only affected you, but it's affected all of us. So the third important part of it is that being vulnerable became a very, very crucial part of dealing with other human beings. And that enables trust and all those other things that come along with it. How do you create the environment for trust? Is being vulnerable.
I think we have to move to rounding up because I see we've got about 6 minutes left. And to do that, I want to do a general check-in and then ask your parting thoughts. And, you can say anything you want in your parting thoughts. Now your hand is raised.
I have a question for all of you, actually. I think this is taking over. Feel free to move past it if you like. But my question is, all the managers and leaders having these qualities is one thing. I think if there are managers who think that they have room to improve, then that's wonderful, and they will probably be attending a webinar like this. They will go through those training programs and they'll make the changes. But what if an employee, and I speak for many, many, many people, I think, when I ask this question, what if you're an employee and your manager is not that aware and doesn't want to look at anything except the bottom line and the numbers, and they don't care about the well-being? How, instead of being part of the Great Resignation, how does one become part of the solution? How does an employee evoke that awareness upward? Is that even possible where there is such a power dynamic? That is the question I want to know the answer to personally.
And participants, please feel free to share your thoughts into the chat box while we talk. Anybody wants to take that?
Making an attempt.
Yeah.
And that is, it may sound vague, but that's my personal belief, not quoting anybody here, is awareness comes to you only when you are looking for it. And maybe I don't think I can make anybody, for that matter, aware of something forcefully, or if I want to, because that the person, if not ready for that, may respond with defense or attack or flight or fight, as we see in coaching. However, it's empowering for you, since you are aware of what your environment is like. So it's easier for you to take actions. So depending on what's more meaningful for you and what's your need at the moment, if it's not being a part of the Great Resignation, how can you unpack the no's that you hear from your manager using of awareness and your communication skills could be the best way to get started. So I think your awareness will be your tool to get past that block with your manager.
Any other advice you want to give or tips you want to add?
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I think earlier when people used to quit, most often than not, it used to be said that the person has quit because of a better pay or a better career. What the Great Resignation has done is that people have quit because of not a very conducive environment or not a very conducive boss. Earlier, while it used to be said that people quit because of bosses, but I don't think, I would say, many organizations focused on that. But what happened is that the Great Resignation part of it started looking at people were jumping out of jobs even if they were getting less pay. People are jumping out of job even if they were not the facilities were not great. So what came out very clearly is that probably people are quitting because the environment or the boss is not very good. So what has effectively happened is that at an organizational level, people have started saying, why is it that this quitting is taking place? So it's not because of salary, it's not because of promotion or whatever it is, it's because that place is toxic. So there has been a lot more focus that at an organizational level, people have started looking at how is a manager or a supervisor contributing in a far more structured manner. People are looking at it and saying that, is it creating a environment where people are willing to even throw their jobs out and quit? That I think has been a big change that has taken place because of this Great Resignation. I think that I have seen it in many organizations that microscopic focus has started.
Yeah, people have become very aware of their own wellness, their own needs, their own growth points, and making their own good choices around that, right? So, panelists, what are your parting thoughts? Your words of wisdom that you want to leave as we close this webinar? Tanaya?
People are not looking for dream jobs, but they're looking for dream lives.
50?
I think the value of relationships has taken precedence over a lot of things. It's not just career and money. Money is important, career is important, but everything else is also equally important. So the balance is quite crucial for everybody.
Venkat?
I will give a opening and then I will give my conclusion along with that. In a sense that earlier, most often than not, as organizations, we used to segment our employees when you do an employee engagement survey and block them in various categories and say this is this category, that category, etc. And then say, do this for this bunch of people, they'll be happy. What one big thing that has happened is there that those hygienic factors can be blockized, can be made into blocks, but people's problems are very individualistic. My problem will be different from your problem, may be different from your problem. So what has happened, one big thing that is happening is that personalization, what people talk about, personalization of any product and services that we talked about. I can see a personalization of how an employee should be looked at for delivering what that person wants, and not one, not doing a whole, for all women do this, for all 30 plus do this, for all 50 plus do this. No, now it is almost like saying 1:1. I think that big change is happening.
Yeah. Neha, from you, what are your parting words of wisdom? And please, participants, also write yours. Any, words of wisdom you want to leave with around building relationships, we'd love to hear it. What are yours, Neha?
I would love to just pick up some things that have been said in the comments. Vinitha says, everything starts with a smile and asking, how are you today? Which doesn't happen after some time. It's so simple. Yet I got goosebumps as I read that, because it's so powerful. Sometimes it's all that is needed to make someone immediately feel better, less anxious, prepared for, even more motivated to work. If I think Venkat mentioned some time back just about giving training to people when they're away from you, when they're only interacting on Zoom for an hour. I think when you see an employee slipping in their performance, maybe that is their first indicator that something is going wrong. If someone is a top performer who is slipping away. So maybe to just ask that extra question, like, how are you today, is super powerful. So that's all I have for now.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Next month's Masters in Coaching webinar, we're going to do some live coaching. So join us next month and have a wonderful week ahead. Lovely being with you all again.